All right, as we begin today, a couple of things to remind you of or let you know of. The midterm grades are up. They did not include the second exam, so it was from before the second exam. But you can look at the Blackboard grade book has grades updated through spring break, including the second exam. The other thing to let you know is that the assignment for the last two reflection papers is up and available on Blackboard. The fourth reflection paper is due April 17th, and the fifth one is due April 24th. And again, you only have to do 4, so if you've already done yours, you don't have to do that last one. You would get extra points if you do, but certainly if you haven't, make sure to complete those. If you have questions about them after looking at the instructions, please let me know so I can clarify. We are going to rapidly move toward the end of the semester here. We just have, I believe it's 7 more classes, and of course we're in chapter 17 today, so we have quite a bit of ground to cover certainly before we're done, but it will move quickly through that. And so we have now finished with the third series of 7. There were 7 seals, there were 7 trumpets, and now the 7 bowls of wrath, which we finished up before spring break. And as we move into this last section, there is some aftermath of that 7th trumpet, or excuse me, the 7 bowls of wrath, but also moving into something different. Something is a different part of what we've been looking at before. So let's go ahead and start with the reading of chapter 17. If somebody would read verses 1 through 10, and then somebody else 11 through 18. 1 through 10 and 11 through 18 of chapter 17.
Then one of the 7 angels who had 7 bowls came and said to me, "Come, I will show you the judgment of the great prostitute who is seated on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed sexual immorality, and with the wine of his sexual immorality the dwellers on earth have become drunk." And he carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names, and it had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and jewels and pearls, holding in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the impurities of her sexual immorality. And on her forehead was written a name of mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes and of earth's abominations. And I saw the woman, drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. When I saw her, I marveled greatly. But the angel said to me, "Why do you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns that carries her. The beast that you saw was and is not, and is about to rise from the bottomless pit and go to destruction. And the dwellers on earth whose names have been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world will marvel to see the beast, because it was and is not and is to come. This calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. There are also 7 kings, 5 of whom have fallen. One is, the other has not yet come. And when he does come, he must remain only a little while."
The beast that was and is not and is himself also the 8th, and it is of the 7th, and it is going to perdition. The 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have received no kingdom as yet, but they receive authority for 1 hour as kings with the beast. These are of one mind, and they will give their power and authority to the beast. These will make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings. And those who are with him are called chosen and faithful. Then he said to me, "The waters which you saw where a harlot sits are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. And the 10 horns which you saw on the beast, these will hate the harlot, make her desolate and naked, eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For God has put it into their hearts to fulfill his purpose, to be of one mind, and to give the kingdom to the beast until the words of God are fulfilled. And the one whom he saw is that great city, which reigns over the kings of the earth.
As we've been going through Revelation, there have been several points along the way where there have been these interruptions in the storyline, so to speak, where we've had like 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 bowls of wrath, but then we've also had these signs, these visions, right? John says about seeing a woman clothed in the sun with a crown on her head, and, the great red dragon, all of these different types of signs that aren't related to the 7 seals, the 7 trumpets, the 7 bowls of wrath, but kind of appear out of nowhere for John to observe, and that's kind of where we are right now, is another one of these signs. And with these signs, John is revealing something about the overall narrative of Revelation, helping us to see some things about what God is wanting to communicate, especially to those 7 churches, the Christians of the first century. But what we have here with this set of, or with this particular sign, is a connection to what has gone on before. So it starts off with, one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls of wrath, right, now communicates with John. A little bit unusual than what we've seen before. But what we have here is this kind of moment of connection between what has just happened, right, the 7 bowls of wrath, and what's coming. Right? So the 7th bowl of wrath has been poured out, and now there's something for John to see. But if we remember, thinking back to the 7 bowls of wrath, the 7th bowl was kind of the finality of God's judgment. It was the voice, "It is done," is heard, and there's a great earthquake. But when we pick up with chapter 17, there are elements here related in the sign of the prostitute and the beast where they are still in existence. Right? So they've been destroyed, but they've not yet been destroyed. And so, again, it kind of folds in on itself. There's a lot of paradoxes here, but it's this continual repetition of different aspects of the same thing, kind of looking at the same scene from different ways, all in a very symbolic way. And so this angel who had one of the bowls of wrath tells John that he is going to show him the judgment of the great whore, or prostitute, or harlot. Right? There's all sorts of different ways that translations try to get across this idea. But in calling this woman a prostitute, or a harlot, or even a whore, what kind of woman is this? What's in using the symbol of a prostitute, what's trying to be communicated? All right, there's that kind of that's free with a couple of different things, but of course we think of in terms of sexuality. All right, prostitutes, harlots, whores are people who sell their bodies for sex, right? And so making money by participating in sexual encounters. Now, certainly, if we were to think about the Bible's stance on such activity, we would say, right, prostitution is condemned by God, right? Because it's sexual relations outside the marriage bond. In addition, of course, the financial component of that as well. And thinking about how God views the body, what our bodies are to be used for. So there's so many things that we could say, if you look in the Bible, God does not approve of prostitution. So it's not that the act of physical prostitution is in view here, but in identifying something here as a prostitute, what would be the idea that is being presented to it? What's the meaning behind the symbol, so to speak? All right, there's an element of unfaithfulness here. We've talked before about the use in Revelation and other places of sexual sins to stand in place of spiritual sins of unfaithfulness, separation from God, those kind of things. And I think that's a lot of what is being presented here as well. What else might be behind the idea of the use of the symbol of a prostitute? Okay, maybe the idea of uncleanness, impurity, We'll certainly see that in other places, in other passages in this chapter. Idolatry probably would fit here as well, because a lot of the use of sexual sins in Revelation and the prophets related to idolatry, people going off to other gods. What else might be behind this?
Maybe something enticing.
All right, so there's the ideas of an enticement, maybe even seduction in a sense. Again, not that physical, sexual sense, but the spiritual sense. And certainly the idea behind the prostitute is you can't be a prostitute by yourself. The prostitution involves bringing other people into this transaction. Right? And so the seduction, the enticement, and then all the spiritual aspects of this as well. And so what we're seeing here is a symbol of something that is enticing, it's seductive, but there's an immorality behind it. There's an impurity behind it. So the great prostitute. But also, and certainly, of course, we understand that even if we didn't understand the moral issues with prostitution, the fact that the whore is going to be judged suggests that this symbol represents something contrary to God or against God. The prostitute is seated on many waters. Now, here too, what would be the idea of seated on many waters? I mean, the symbols will be explained later, right? And especially this one. Right, the prostitute, it says prostitute, it means city, it says waters, it means people and nations. But what's the usefulness of using water as a symbol for where this prostitute sits? All right, changing, flowing, right, things are coming and going, it's in and out. And so the prostitutes kind of sit at the center of all sorts of things coming and going. And so, this is the kind of symbol we're presented with. And then the immorality, of course, is emphasized again as well. The kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, or committed sexual immorality with her. Again, we already know, having read, that this says prostitute, it means city, so the kings have not physically committed prostitution with a city. But there is a spiritual transaction here that is symbolized in the transactions that would take between a prostitute and her client.
I would also say, since water was the best method of transportation at this time, it gives you the idea that this has affected like every corner of the earth, basically.
Yeah, that when you kind of get the image of the prostitute at the center, and these waters just going out from, because it's many waters, right? It's not a river; it's many waters going a variety of places, and with the shipping travel and all. And we've talked before about how dependent Rome was on sea exchange. So this idea of committing fornication and the many waters and the kings of the earth, right? This is not just something localized, but is broad, is widespread. And of course we kind of see with this fornication, the waters moving, the flowing in and out, and the prostitution, right? This is immorality, right? That is flowing in and out. And so it's the center of immorality here. But it's immorality that it's affected the kings of the earth, but it's also infected the common people. Right? So the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her. The inhabitants of the earth have become drunk on her wine. We've talked before about the ideas of drunkenness, of wine, connected with those kind of things, but the idea of losing control. And so this kind of giving up of a person's self. Now, certainly, again, the symbols are revealed later, and we'll talk about what these specific symbols are in more detail as we get through. But we can also think about, and we touched on this already, how Israel, go back to the Old Testament, and passages in Ezekiel, and in Isaiah, Hosea, where Israel, in going after other deities, going after God, is kind of pictured as a prostitute. Right? And so this idea coming from an Old Testament heritage. Now, again, a lot of this is focused on this great city, these peoples, these nations, right, the inhabitants of the earth. But what warning might be offered here already to those original readers in kind of bringing this picture to their minds? What warning might be crouched in this?
That if you give in, you're going to get the judgment.
Okay, that if you give in, you're going to get the same kind of judgment. And we'll see that again in chapter 18 and 19, where if you don't come out, if you don't separate yourself from this, you'll end up being judged the same as well. What else might we take from this, whether first century or today? One of the things that I kind of thought about here, again, it's all connected to this idea of compromise, compromising your faith. This, you think you're getting something, but what you are really getting is turning out to be something else, right? And so what these people think they're going to get by compromising their faith, by participating with the beast, by being involved with the prostitute, following the teachings of Jezebel or Balaam, as we see back in chapters 2 and 3. They think they're getting into one thing. But what they're really going to get is something else. And so we are presented here with John kind of moving to see the judgment of the great prostitute. And so the angel here carries John away. And he says that he's carried away in the Spirit. Now, depending on your translation, you might have a capital S, or you might have a lowercase s, or you might have a lowercase s with a footnote that says it could be a capital S, right? Because essentially it could be either of two ways. It could be in the Spirit, meaning the Holy Spirit, or it could mean spiritually, right? In the Spirit, in the sense of he's not physically going there, but he is seeing it. Ezekiel frequently was carried in the Spirit like this. If you go throughout the book of Ezekiel, you'll see Ezekiel being carried in the Spirit or by the Spirit to a variety of places. The Valley of the Dry Bones, for example, in Ezekiel 37, I was carried in the Spirit to this. And so essentially, this idea, he wasn't actually going anywhere. This was spiritually occurring. But where he's taken is to a wilderness or desert. And either one might show up in your translation. Now here too, desert should be understood symbolically. So what's the meaning behind the symbol of this woman, this prostitute, being in a desert? Right, spiritually barren, right? It's a spiritual wasteland. But it might also be suggestive of what's going to happen to the prostitute. When you go back and look at the prophets and how the prophets judge different cities and nations, frequently the judgment was that God's going to make you into a deserted place. You look at Babylon, or you look at some of those other nations. Right? God's going to turn you into a wasteland. So that might be the fact that the prostitute is in this spiritual wasteland, or this is what's going to occur. God's going to make it a spiritual wasteland. And so this is where this woman sits. It's deserted.